We talked a little bit about the strikes and controversy around Secretary of the Defense Pete Hegseth.
I don't know anything about it. He said he did not say that, and I believe it.
Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed.
A perfect picture of fear. The president pushes the blame onto the secretary. The secretary hides behind the White House and pushes it onto the admiral. And the admiral, of course, he has no authority to push back. This is not the logic of an administration confident in its own actions. No one dares say, I gave the order, I'm responsible. Why? Because what they fear most is timing. Next year is the midterm election, and every new poll shows one alarming trend for Trump and the Republicans. Democrats have a very real chance of taking back the House. If that happens, the House Armed Services Committee will fall into the hands of lawmakers who have already publicly called this episode potentially criminal behavior. Once Democrats take over, they can demand classified records, subpoena generals, bring Hegseth into open testimony, and even put Trump on the witness list. If that happens, Trump and Hegseth's world changes overnight. No more Republican-led Armed Services Committee shielding them. No more limited hearings. No more superficial investigations. Instead, a new investigative machine, sharper, more motivated, and far more aggressive. Democrats have said this outright. Congressman Seth Moulton declared publicly that if they take control of the committee, this incident will be exposed to the very end. And it's not just Moulton. Several other Democrats smell the signs of a major military scandal, the kind that can burn through an administration's reputation. That's why Trump and Hegseth's biggest fear isn't the question who gave the order, but who will investigate it. With a Republican-controlled Congress, every hearing can be slowed, limited in scope, or softened into friendly questions like, do you believe you acted appropriately? But if Democrats regain control, the questions will no longer be soft. They'll demand internal emails. They'll demand operational orders. They'll demand the names of those who oversaw the strike. And most importantly, they'll demand sworn testimony from everyone involved, including Hegseth, and even Trump himself. Nothing is more terrifying for an administration dodging responsibility with contradictory statements. Watching Trump's reaction makes one thing clear. He's not afraid of questions. He's afraid of the process. He's afraid of a formal investigation, like something he can't control through Twitter. He's afraid of congressional committees with the authority to demand classified information. He's afraid of live televised hearings. And above all, he's afraid that people loyal to Hegseth, your staff inside the Pentagon, will tell the truth. This fear shows most clearly when Trump tries to shield himself using two contradictory statements. But that shield is too thin, and because it's thin, it reveals that this incident is not simple. If this were merely a tactical mistake, they would have taken responsibility and handled it internally. But when they need to produce three different narratives, Trump's version, the White House version, and Hegseth's version, it proves none of them are strong enough to stand on their own. And that leaves the public wondering, if the order was lawful, why won't anyone claim it? If the target was clear, why not name them? If the mission was transparent, why did they destroy every piece of evidence with a second missile? That last question is exactly why this scandal cannot be buried. If everything were clean, they wouldn't have wiped the site so thoroughly. Destroying evidence is always the worst possible sign in any investigation. Inside the campaign, Trump's advisors surely understand how dangerous this is. If the scandal drags into a period when Democrats retake the House, it won't just be a scandal, it becomes a political weapon, one that can be used throughout the entire election cycle, from the midterms all the way into the presidential race. Once a politician gets branded as someone who covered up wrongdoing, it's nearly impossible to recover politically. Even inside the Republican Party, anxiety is building. Some want to distance themselves from Trump, fearing that if the scandal spreads, it will drag the entire party into a defensive posture. That's why you see certain Republicans saying, if the reports are true, this is a violation of the laws of war. Those statements aren't about justice, they're about survival. Republicans fear being dragged down with the ship. Democrats smell an opportunity to expose the truth. The White House is scrambling to build a wall of excuses, and Trump, as usual, hides behind, "I don't know anything." But the most revealing figure is Hegseth. His bravado. I mean, we know exactly who was on that boat. What is nothing more than a thin coat of paint covering the fact that he won't say anything specific. And when asked about names, evidence, targets, or motives, he refuses to answer. Not because he doesn't want to, because he can't. When a senior official cannot defend his actions with data, evidence, or a legitimate rationale, it means only one thing. He knows the story will be investigated, and once that happens, every confident statement he's made will be peeled apart. As the midterms get closer, both Trump and Hegseth understand that time is not on their side. Each new poll, each new hearing, each leak from the Pentagon pushes them closer to facing a full investigation. And nothing terrifies them more than an investigation controlled entirely by the opposition. That is why they are behaving this way. Avoidance, blame shifting, contradictions, and waiting for a political miracle. But the miracle isn't coming. Polls aren't improving. And the scandal keeps growing. At this point, everything points to a single conclusion. This is not a story they can escape with, "I don't know anything." This is a story that will become a political weapon the moment Democrats retake the House. And when that happens, the kill everybody order won't just be a news headline. It will be sworn testimony in a congressional hearing. What makes this even more dangerous for the Trump administration is not just the act itself, but the political momentum surrounding it. When a military scandal erupts in a non-election year, politicians can delay, deflect, cool things down. But when it explodes right before a midterm, it's where just a few flipped seats change who controls investigations. Every calculation becomes about one thing: surviving until election day. Trump knows this, Hegseth knows this, and Republicans know this. All three are racing against the clock. Because if Democrats reclaim the House, their first priority won't be legislation, budgets, or social programs. It will be investigations. Especially military-related ones, which they've long viewed as a shield hiding wrongdoing in the shadows. The Hegseth-Trump incident will become target number one, not only because of its severity, but because it offers enormous political value. A scandal that can alienate independent voters, anger veterans, and push moderate Republicans away from their own leadership. This explains why Trump and the White House are giving contradictory statements. They aren't trying to prove the action was right. They're trying to prove it wasn't my decision. Because they know, once an investigation starts, Trump cannot be criminally prosecuted while in office, but he absolutely can be dragged into brutal hearings where every word becomes future evidence. Hegseth is even more terrified. If Trump fears political fallout, Hegseth fears his career and his freedom. Trump is a former president. Hegseth is just a Secretary of Defense. If an investigation determines there was an unlawful verbal order amounting to a war crime, the first person legally liable isn't Trump, it's Hegseth. The phrase "kill everybody," if proven, isn't just misconduct. It's a war crime by definition. That's why Hegseth speaks with such forced bravado. He talks as if he holds all the facts. But when asked for evidence, he immediately pivots. This is a national security matter. We can't disclose that. These aren't explanations. They're shields used by weak officials when facing questions they cannot answer. In politics, loud confidence is often the scream of internal panic. If Hegseth truly believed he was innocent, he wouldn't need the White House to speak for him. If Trump truly trusted Hegseth, he wouldn't say, "I don't know anything." Their behavior reveals one simple truth: none of them believe the story they're telling. And what makes their fear spike even further are the internal leaks from the Pentagon. When the scandal broke, it wasn't only the Washington Post receiving tips. Other outlets began getting anonymous comments from concerned officials. These weren't anti-Trump figures. They were military officers, insiders, people who understand the laws of war. When they start saying, "We are concerned that the order was unlawful," it shows the internal fracture can no longer be hidden. A government is only dangerous when everyone is united in the cover-up. But a government that starts cracking, where insiders fear for their own legal safety, cannot hide a major scandal. And in this case, the cracks are appearing in the one place Trump and Hegseth fear most, the military. To understand how serious this is, remember, the U.S. military keeps extremely strict logs and records. A verbal order still ends up in an operational log. A phone call may be captured in encrypted signals. A meeting has internal minutes. A strike has drone data, camera feeds, radar, air control recordings. They have everything. And what terrifies Trump and Hegseth is not whether the data exists, but who gets access to it. And that depends entirely on who controls the House. If Democrats take power, they can subpoena every record, every file, every data point related to the incident. And the Pentagon must comply, because the military doesn't answer to Trump. It answers to the law and to Congress. This is the administration's worst nightmare. They cannot stop Congress from seeing classified material. The closer we get to Election Day, the clearer it becomes that this scandal cannot be blocked with vague statements. Even pro-administration media are starting to raise questions. Conservative commentators who normally defend Trump now admit the White House's explanations lack credibility. Some try to protect him by saying this was a covert operation. Secrecy is normal, but even they know that doesn't explain why the administration has 3 conflicting versions of the story. When a scandal has multiple versions, each serving a short-term political purpose, none of them are true, that's when Trump reverts to his familiar tactic, blaming the media. He says the press made it up, exaggerated, twisted the story. But the striking detail is this: the sources aren't just journalists. They're officials inside the Pentagon, people expected to be loyal to the administration. When uniformed officers no longer protect their civilian leadership, it's not a normal scandal anymore. It's a crisis of internal trust. If an investigation begins, those officials become witnesses. And when there are witnesses, documents, drone footage, operational logs, internal emails, no denial can survive. Not in a public hearing, not in front of a committee determined to uncover wrongdoing, and certainly not in front of the American public during an election year. That's why this story is not just about who gave the order. What's happening is a political race between time and truth. The Trump administration is trying to delay, obscure, and push blame downward. Democrats are waiting for one thing: control of the House, and once they get it, no one, not Trump, not Hegseth, not the top generals, can stop the wave of testimony, documents, and data that will surface. Just like Iran-Contra or Abu Ghraib, the worst case scenario for Trump and Hegseth isn't political damage. The worst case is potential criminal exposure. Because if investigators confirm that the kill everybody order was real, that is the definition of a war crime. And once the phrase war crime enters hearings, legal analyses, and congressional statements, the scandal cannot be shelved, ignored, or forgotten. What they fear most is not the article, what they fear most is the day Democrats regain investigative power, because when that day comes, every statement they've made, I don't know anything, that was the Admiral's decision, we know exactly who they were, will be crushed under the weight of evidence. And when that happens, no one gets to run anymore.